Hey, what's going on, folks? This is Balaji with Brave Young Heroes. You're in the Raising Resilient Kids Summit, and I have a dynamic mind for you to enjoy today. He's a clinical professor of psychiatry at the UCLA School of Medicine, the founding director of the Mindful Awareness Research Center at UCLA. He's an award-winning educator, a distinguished fellow of the American Psychiatric. He's the executive director of the Mindsight Institute and the author of some amazing books that you've heard of: The Whole Brain Child, No Drama Discipline, and The Yes Brain. Please help me welcome the great Dr. Dan Siegel. Doc, welcome.
Balaji, thanks for having me. Nice to be here.
This is a distinct pleasure. I'm a huge fan of your work, as are many of the parents that are enjoying this video. You've done so much over the years to help parents and to help schools figure out our kids. Your most recent work that we're enjoying is The Yes Brain, and I'm very excited to dig into that. So, Dr. Dan, could you tell us, so we're working from the same framework, what you're referring to when you say a yes brain?
Yeah, so, kids, once they hit 12 months of age, start hearing the word no a lot. And for me, as a parent and, as an educator, but also as a therapist, I realized that experience you have when someone says no, 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 really harshly, creates a certain state inside of you that's activated when you feel threatened. And we do need to hear no, for sure. We need to have structure and learn how to discipline ourselves so we know there are limitations to what we can do. We don't just always act on an impulse. So it's important to hear that we have those boundaries. And we also need to hear yes, because yes is what gives you resilience, gives you a sense of believing in yourself. It allows you to feel like, wow, someone heard me. So let's say, for example, you're a kid with a curiosity about bugs and you find this really cool grasshopper.
Right.
And you catch the grasshopper and you're going to show it to your mom or your dad or some other relative. And they go, no, get that out of here.
That's
like
right.
that. And they scream, how could you bring that bug in this house? That's going to make you feel ashamed of your curiosity about the bug. A parent can make a decision. We have no bugs in our house. But before you bring that grasshopper into the house, he or she gets down at your level, eye to eye. Yes, what an interesting grasshopper. We're not going to bring it in, but show me what you're so fascinated with this little bug. So now you've had a yes response, but you're getting the structure of, I don't bring bugs into the house. My curiosity about the bug has been honored. My parent sees what's going on inside of me. I'm fascinated with bugs. I'm honored for that fascination. And my idea, bring it in the house, came up with a boundary, which once my parent connects with me first, he or she can redirect me. So a yes brain is where a child feels seen and heard and understood and feels really like they belong in the world. And it allows them to take a limitation, like don't yell at someone, don't hit someone, don't bring a bug in the house. Create that boundary of behavior. I wanted to bring the bug in, but I don't, and still feel solid about who they are without feeling that shame and humiliation that can come in when you get the harsh no like that. So that's basically what a yes brain is. It's a way for a parent to think, my job is to teach the skills of disciplined behavior, boundaries, understanding the structure of how we interact with each other, and doing it in a yes brain kind of way.
That fascinates me, Dr. Dan, and it fascinates me because I suppose if we contrast to how a lot of us were raised, our parents, they worked so hard to put a roof over our heads, food on the table, and to prepare us for that world out there that maybe would not love us as much as they loved us, which meant sometimes they were harsh with us. Because if we weren't used to hearing that harsh no in the house, how would we react out there in school or in society when we heard the harsh no? So how do we parents reconcile how a lot of us were raised with that harsh no being supposedly being a positive thing. How do we reconcile that with this new science that's telling us about the yes brain?
Well, that's a great question, Balaji. You know, the thing to think about is, could you have said that same sentence to me without the word harsh to it?
I suppose. Okay, so I suppose I could. I could say, our parents loved us so much and did the very best that they could to raise us.
Mm-hmm.
And now that we have new information, we're able to apply, we're able to accentuate the efforts that, or the foundations that they gave to us for a new generation.
Yes. So let's build on that. So let's take the fundamental idea you're expressing, which is, don't parents have to give kids experiences that build resilience by preparing them for the real world? And the answer is absolutely yes.
Okay.
Now, the next question is, cool, that's what we all agree with. How do you do that?
Mm-hmm.
So, I've heard stories where parents will beat their children
Yeah.
because they say the world is so terrible out there. I want them to be used to being hurt. And I go, well, actually, the research doesn't support that physically abusing your children prepares them for anything. It just makes them feel like they can't trust you, and they see you're really not competent at parenting them without inflicting physical pain on them.
Mm-hmm.
So then you could extend it to the same thing. Do we need to emotionally abuse our children to get them ready for the outside world? And I don't think there's any research that supports that, even though I understand many parents were raised that way. So then the next layer of questions is, well, if emotional abuse and verbal abuse and, physical abuse are not helpful because they demean a child and they make them feel actually terrible about themselves, you could say, well, isn't it true that since the world is so hard, you should basically tell a kid they're no good and you don't really believe in them and they think they're going to do this or do that? You should just, say, oh, who do you think you are, And I know he said it publicly. Let me just filter some things through me. There's someone I work with who, he said it publicly, but I just want to protect his confidentiality because it wasn't that big a group where he said it. But basically he said that in school, people would say, who do you think you are? He was an African-American young boy. Mm-hmm. I said, who do you think you are that you can do this kind of thing? You're an African-American young boy. You can't do that. And on this day, August 20th, 2019, this is, as you probably know, the 400th anniversary. August 20th is considered the formal date of the first slave ship arriving from Africa with African individuals who were stolen from Africa, Now, you could say, well, we're going to have these people enslaved and they're going to learn to be, whatever you could do. Well, no, that doesn't give resilience. And when this gentleman, hundreds of years later, an African-American gentleman, was told, who do you think you are? He tells this incredible story. He tells the story of being with his mom, who said, you can do anything you have in your mind to do. I believe in you. You have an interest, you can make it happen. So when the school counselor told him, who do you think you are? You're going to go to college. No one in your family ever went to college. He had the message from his parents that gave him a yes brain that said, you can do it. Now, his parents could have instead said, oh, this is a hard time for African Americans. We got to prepare a young boy that he can't do things. So let's tell him, you may have all sorts of ideas of being a lawyer or being in government or things he ended up doing, but something, we really don't believe in you. We're actually telling you can't do it because we want to protect you. So you're not disappointed when the world tells you that. Well, when you hear him talk, he says it's his relatives who told him, don't believe those messages that they tell you that you're African American and you can't do things. You can do whatever you set your mind out to do. And he did. And he's doing it right now. And you see him in the news all the time. And, the reason I say this to you, because I hear what you're saying, and I know some parents who love their kids like mad will be really harsh with them, thinking that's going to prepare them. I mean, my dad was that way with me. You know, really harsh with me when later, when I was an adult, I said, "Why did you do that?" He goes, "I was preparing you for the real world." That just made me feel insecure. You know, and I don't. So some people say it even like, you know, my in-laws once said it to me when our first child was born, and he was like 4 weeks old, and he'd cry, and we'd pick him up, and they'd come to me and they go, "You're going to spoil him."
That's
I
right.
go, "What do you mean?" They said, "You got to prepare him for the real world."
Yes.
You know, I said, "He's only 4 weeks old." They said, "That's okay. He's got to learn right away. The world doesn't always give him what he wants." And now I was an attachment researcher, so luckily I knew what the research it showed. No, they are wrong. That you can't, first of all, you can't spoil a child less than a year of age. And the more you love a child and give that child support, that's the yes brain approach, the more they're actually going to feel good in themselves, and they will have the resilience to face people like what my colleague faced when people said, "You can't do this. Who do you think you are?" You know? So I guess I want to say that, yeah, we need to say no to our children as we're connecting with them and really acknowledging that what they're interested in is fine, but they can't do that behavior. And it doesn't have to be done harshly. And let's extend the word harsh to in a terrifying way, because my area of research, attachment, and my colleagues have shown that when children experience terror that's induced by their caregivers,
Yes.
it is not helpful. It is not helpful. And sometimes those parents are doing it because they think, "Oh, I'm getting them ready for the real world because the real world is terrifying." Well, guess what? The research is really clear. You terrify your kid as an attachment figure, and it just fragments their mind. It doesn't make them resilient.
Wow.
Now, let's build on what you said. Will it develop a defensive approach so that you disconnect from the harshness and it makes you, like, quote, strong inside? Well, it builds up a wall that makes you have the outward appearance of strength. But when you really study those kids, it just makes them shut down.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, this is opening up, I think, for a lot of people. This is probably hitting close to home. Parenting is one of those, it seems like maybe the only profession where you are expected to be an expert from day one.
Oh my gosh, yeah. The fact is, it's harder to get a driver's license than become a parent.
Well, look at there. There you have
Right?
it. There you have it. That's pretty
No.
remarkable. I want to sort of go deeper, Dr. Dan, on this concept of attachment and giving your child a lot of love and support when they're young. You've used the definition, a developmental relationship.
Yeah.
And I wonder if you could expand on that. What does that mean?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, Tina Payne Bryson and I have a book, The Power of Showing Up, which walks you step by step through a translation of the attachment research world. The science of parent-child relationships is called attachment. And interestingly, it's not related to what you hear in the popular literature about something called attachment parenting. So I just want to be really, really clear about this. I'm an attachment researcher, and this is different from what you hear in other fields that use the same word, attachment.
Got it.
In the country, you can use whatever words you want to use.
Excellent.
So this power of showing up really gives you a summary of that. But to get to this idea of a developmental relationship you're asking about, which Balaji is so important. A developmental relationship basically is a connection you have with another person. That's a relationship that shapes your development, right?
Okay.
So it turns out that as human beings, we have a very unusual thing that we do. Of course, as mammals, we have something called attachment, which means all mammals, and humans are just one example, were born very, very immature, and we require the caretaking and protection of our what are called attachment figures, and it's usually the parent, who's going to protect us. They're going to see us, they're going to soothe us, they're going to keep us safe. And if we have those three things, being seen, soothed,